Hi everybody, this is Charlie Saccarelli from Chadwick Optical, and today we're going to talk about what is a refraction. What does a refraction actually do? This is probably what your refraction looks like. You can see there's different components. There's a sphere component, a cylinder component, an axis component, a prism, and a base component, and then a lot of times there will also be an add component. So we'll talk about each of those components in just a second, but first I want to talk about how the eyeball is intended to work and what can go wrong. So this is an eyeball and this is the image being formed on the retina. So what's happening is the cornea plus the lens, those two things work together, and they create a focused inverted image on the retina. So those two things, if you have what's called perfect vision, those two things work together without any help. Now, what glasses and what contact lenses are intended to do is if you have some kind of aberrations that exist in here, we put a third item in front and we redirect the incoming light. So this lens plus this lens plus this lens can ultimately focus a clear image onto the back of the retina. All right, so let's talk about what each component of the prescription does. So you have we're going to start with sphere. So the sphere component, if you picture a ball is perfectly symmetrical no matter what way you turn it. And what the spherical component of a prescription does is it focuses light uniformly. So it focuses light to a single point. Now, what that means is that if on here, your image is focusing here, instead of here, what we can do is redirect the incoming light in such a way that it pulls this image forward to focus there. Let's talk about cylinder. So if you think of a cylinder, the best thing that you can probably think of as a cylinder is a can. Now, if I look at the curves of a sphere and I measure the curves of a sphere, anywhere on that sphere is going to be the exact same curve. Now, let's compare that to a cylinder. Is if I measure the curve here, it's completely flat. And then if I measure the curve here, it's total curve. And every spot in between there is a fraction somewhere between flat and the total curve. Hopefully that makes sense. So what would happen is if we pass light through a sphere, it focuses light to a single point. If we pass light through a cylinder, it focuses light to a line. So it doesn't focus it to a point, it focuses it to a line. So a pure cylinder would only focus light to a line. Now, what happens when you take a sphere and a cylinder? Now, is say that your eye does not focus light to a point, it focuses light something like this. So it's asymmetrical. Now, what we would do is we would use the combination of a sphere and a cylinder so that this part would focus to a point and also this part would focus to a point separately. So the combination of sphere and cylinder, and then the axis is the axis that this warpage of the eye is turned, that helps the lens focus, the lens plus the cornea plus the lens focus light to a point. So that's the purpose of the sphere, the cylinder, and the axis. Now what's prism? So normally when these two components focus light, so if you have light coming in, it focuses it to a point, it focuses it to a line. What does prism do? All prism does is just shifts light. So if you have a prism and you send light through a prism, it shifts it. That's all it does. Now, if you compare that to a sphere focusing light, a cylinder focusing light to a line, prism bends the light, just bends the light. Now, why would you want to do that? You have two eyes. Say those two eyes see the images in a different place. You might want to bend the light in one eye so that you create equal retinal images. That's one use of prism. There are many other uses of prism in neurooptometry and concussion care and migraine headache management. We're not going to nerd out on those too much right now. Just know that prism is a thing. Now, the other thing that exists is this, which is called the add power. Now, I recently went over the age of 40, which unpleasant experience. My knees hurt. But the add power, much like my knees, inside my eyeballs, the lens, this part, which for a young man or woman or human, acts as a focusing device, hardens up over time and gets less flexible. So what happens is where once upon a time I could see distance and then look close and it wouldn't be bothersome, now my eyes just don't make that adjustment as quick, or at all, really. And what the add does is compensates for your lens's lack of adjustment. So what this is, if you have a sphere prescription, this is a bifocal. So this would necessitate bifocals. Now the interesting thing is, say that this is minus 250 and this is plus 250. Those things add up to 0. So you don't need anything. You can just, so basically these offset each other. So the add is in addition to the distance. So if I have a minus 2 with a plus 2 add, I could get bifocals, or I could just take my glasses off to read. So that's one option. This is important to recognize, and as you get older, the need for an add is going to increase. But the add is always going to be on top of, it gets stacked on top of this main prescription, and that's what you need for reading. One thing to be aware of with this refraction is that this is typically done for 20 feet. This is typically done for about 16 inches or 40 centimeters. Now, the question is, if you work on a computer all day, is your computer 20 feet away? Probably not. Is your computer 16 inches away? Also probably not. So one of the things that it might be useful to be aware of is that what we can do is use just part of the add for an increased working distance. So say that you have a computer that is 30 inches away instead of 16. What we can do is, instead of plus 250, we can back the add off a certain amount, and then your glasses will work for that 30 inch or whatever distance your computer is away from the from you. This is one of the bigger problems that we see as you get older and you're a heavy computer user, is that the computer's it's at an awkward distance where you can't quite find the sweet spot in your lens to make it work. So prism bends light, and the base determines which direction it bends light. So a lot of times the doctor will put in, out, up, or down. The other thing that they will occasionally do is put it at an angle. So they might say, hey, this is, 2 at 75, or they might say 2 in. So there's different nomenclatures for stating prism, but basically the direction of the prism is what the base is. And as we see in this image earlier, with the prism, this is called the apex. The top point's called the apex. This is the base. So that's really all they're talking about when they're talking about base, is this is the direction of the base of the prism. That's about all there is to it. So if you have any questions about it, ask in the comments. Happy to make new videos and talk more about this, because I live this stuff.